Young and the Restless Early Edition spoilers. Sharon and Nick face worst nightmare. Coming up on YandR next week, Sharon Newman and her ex-husband Nick Newman are in the hospital looking distraught. Then, they run into Daniel Romalotti and Heather Stevens, who are surprised to see them. Nick is shocked to hear Daniel and Heather's daughter, Lucy Romalotti, was in a car accident. Daniel asks what they are doing there, and Sharon simply responds, "Faith." Indeed, Daniel is stunned to hear that Faith Newman and Lucy were together in the car. Last we saw the girls, Faith gave Lucy a ride home after catching her drinking again. Then, on the way home, Lucy started throwing up and Faith lost control of the car when she tried to help her on Young and the Restless. Now, both of them are unconscious and their parents are frantic. YandR Weekly Spoilers. Victor stuns Kyle. As Sharon Newman, Sharon Case, and Nick Newman, Joshua Morrow, wait anxiously with Heather Stevens, Vale Bloom, and Daniel Romalotti, Michael Graziade, more drama erupts. Victor Newman, Eric Braden, has drinks with Kyle Abbott, Michael Mealer, at the Genoa City Athletic Club bar. He tells Kyle he thinks it's time for his granddaughter, Claire Grace Howard Newman, Haley Aaron, to make a change. He says Kyle should start looking for a replacement for Claire as his nanny. Kyle can't believe what he's hearing and asks Victor if he is asking him to fire Claire. Indeed, it looks like that's exactly what the mustache wants. Young and the Restless Early Edition spoilers. Adam's lies catch up with him. Elsewhere, Adam Newman, Mark Grossman, is furious when Billy Abbott, Jason Thompson, shows up at his place drunk and aggressive. Adam is still lying about his night with Chelsea Lawson, Melissa Claire Egan. He's trying to keep it from his girlfriend, Sally Spectra, Courtney Hope. However, Chelsea already told Billy the truth while Adam was getting deeper into his lies. So, this week on Young and the Restless, Billy confronts Adam. He says Chelsea told him the truth and had the courage to be honest with him, but Adam doesn't have any courage. Adam tells Billy he's drunk and needs to leave and sleep it off. But Sally appears behind him and asks him to stay. No doubt, she wants to hear what Billy has to say. YandR is intense next week. Tune in to see if this latest tragedy brings Sharon Newman closer to Nick Newman on the CBS daytime drama. Get all the latest Young and the Restless spoilers and updates daily from Soap Dirt. The halls of Newman Enterprises were unusually tense that morning, the kind of tension that prickled the skin and made even the most seasoned employees feel like they were walking on eggshells. Sharon Newman had already arrived at the office, her usual calm composure replaced by a deep, gnawing anxiety. She kept glancing at her phone every few seconds, praying for a message that wouldn't come. Nick Newman, her ex-husband and the man who had once been her anchor through countless storms, was equally restless. He had stormed into the office earlier than usual, his face pale, jaw tight, and eyes darting over every shadow as if expecting some unseen threat to appear. Today, both Sharon and Nick were about to confront a nightmare they had both secretly feared. A nightmare that could unravel everything they had worked so hard to rebuild in their lives. It all started the night before, when Nick received an anonymous tip at home. The message was chilling in its simplicity. What you thought was buried will come back to haunt you. Sharon knows. The cryptic warning had sent a shiver down Nick's spine, immediately igniting a firestorm of panic. He tried to reason it away. Maybe it was a prank or some disgruntled employee. But deep down, he knew the history that clung to his family like a persistent shadow. Sharon, meanwhile, had been blindsided by her own warning. A mysterious call to her cell phone, from a number she didn't recognize, left her shaken to the core. The voice on the other end had been distorted, almost robotic, but the message was unmistakable. Your past is about to collide with your present. Brace yourself, Sharon. Her hands trembled as she replayed the message in her head, realizing that somehow, the consequences of her past mistakes were catching up to her, and dragging Nick along for the ride. The first sign of trouble came when Victor Newman, the ever-watchful patriarch, summoned Sharon and Nick to his office. His expression was grim, and the usually unflappable Victor seemed unusually perturbed. "Sit down," he commanded, his voice low but commanding. Sharon and Nick exchanged a wary glance before obeying. Victor didn't waste time. He laid out a stack of documents on the mahogany desk, each one representing a piece of the nightmare that was about to engulf them. There were financial reports, legal filings, and even personal correspondence that Nick had long thought was securely buried. But what truly made their hearts pound was the final revelation. A damning document that tied both Sharon and Nick to a scandal that could destroy not only their reputations, but also their careers. Sharon's hand flew to her mouth as she read the headline. Newman family secrets exposed, Sharon and Nick implicated in corporate sabotage. Her mind raced. Could this really be happening? Had someone actually dug up old evidence and twisted it to attack them? Nick, usually the rock in any storm, was momentarily speechless. His mind spun with possibilities, each more terrifying than the last. Who could do this? He finally stammered, his voice tight with controlled panic. Victor's expression didn't soften. That, my son, is exactly what we need to find out. And fast. Because if this hits the media, it won't just be embarrassing, it could destroy everything. Outside the walls of Newman Enterprises, the city was buzzing with rumors. Sharon and Nick could feel the weight of eyes on them wherever they went. Colleagues whispered behind closed doors, and every phone call and text message seemed loaded with suspicion. The nightmare wasn't just on paper. It was alive, moving through the lives of everyone they knew. At home that evening, Sharon tried to calm herself, pacing the floor of her apartment as the city lights flickered against the window panes. She knew she couldn't face this alone, not with Nick already under unimaginable pressure. She dialed his number, her hands shaking. "Sharon," Nick answered after a few rings, his voice raw with emotion. "We have to get ahead of this, Nick," she said, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. "We can't wait for it to explode in our faces. We need a plan." Nick ran a hand through his hair, the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. "I know, Sharon. But this is worse than anything I've ever faced. It's like someone knows every mistake, every slip, every secret, and they're using it to destroy us. How do we fight that?" Sharon's mind raced. She knew the answer wasn't easy. They couldn't simply hide. The truth had to come out, but exposing it meant risking everything they had built. And yet, in the silence of their mutual fear, they found a shared determination. The next day, they met at Crimson Lights to strategize. The small coffee shop, usually a sanctuary, felt like a war room. Sharon spread out her notes, each detail meticulously recorded. Names of people who might have motives, suspicious transactions, and potential leaks within Newman Enterprises. Focused on the legal angle, drafting a list of attorneys and investigators who could help them untangle the web of deceit. "We need to be smart," he said, determination creeping into his voice. "We can't react emotionally. Whoever is behind this wants to see us crumble. We have to be 2 steps ahead." Their plan was risky. They decided to confront the source directly. But first, they had to confirm who it was. Sharon and Nick divided the tasks. Sharon would handle the social side, reaching out discreetly to friends and contacts who might have insider knowledge, while Nick would focus on tracking the financial trails and documents. Meanwhile, the city of Genoa City was ripe with anticipation. Word of the impending scandal had leaked to the press, and whispers of Newman family secrets were on everyone's lips. Reporters camped outside Newman Enterprises, cameras poised to catch the first hint of trouble. The stakes had never been higher. Sharon's investigation led her to a familiar face, someone from her past who had always harbored resentment. Phyllis Summers. Sharon approached her cautiously, sensing the potential for both alliance and betrayal. "Phyllis," Sharon began, her voice calm but firm. "I need your help. Something big is coming, and it could destroy Nick and me. I know we haven't always been friends, but you're the only one who might know what's really happening." Phyllis eyed her warily, suspicion etched into every line of her face. "Why should I help you, Sharon? After everything?" "Because if I go down, so do you," Sharon replied, meeting her gaze. "And I know you don't want that." Phyllis hesitated, then reluctantly nodded. "All right. But if this blows up, Sharon, we're both on the line." Meanwhile, Nick's path led him to a financial consultant who had once worked with Victor. Hidden accounts, shadow transactions, and coded emails pointed toward a startling conclusion. Someone within Newman Enterprises had been orchestrating a campaign to frame Nick and Sharon, manipulating their past mistakes to construct the perfect nightmare. The revelation hit Nick like a punch to the gut. The betrayal was close to home, and the implications were terrifying. "It's someone we trust," he muttered to himself, his mind spinning with suspicion. As the pieces began to fall into place, Sharon and Nick realized they had to act quickly. A confrontation was inevitable. They scheduled a meeting at the Newman estate, inviting only the key players. Victor sat at the head of the table, Phyllis to one side, and Sharon and Nick across from him, tension thick enough to cut with a knife. The source of their nightmare was finally revealed: Adam Newman. The once trusted family member had orchestrated the scheme, motivated by a mix of revenge, jealousy, and the desire to seize power. His calm, smug demeanor only fueled the fire of Sharon and Nick's anger and fear. You thought you could keep the family empire intact while I plotted behind the scenes? Adam sneered. You underestimated me. And now the truth is coming out, your worst nightmare. Sharon felt her chest tighten, but she refused to let Adam see her panic. We've survived your schemes before, Adam. We'll survive this one too, she said, her voice steady but edged with fire. Nick leaned forward, eyes blazing. This ends now, Adam. You've gone too far. Whatever you've done, we'll expose it, and you'll pay for it. The standoff was electric. Adam's smirk faltered slightly as he realized that Sharon and Nick were united, their combined determination a force even he couldn't easily break. The nightmare had arrived, but instead of destroying them, it had forged a new alliance, a shared resilience that would make them stronger than ever. By the end of the day, Sharon and Nick had begun dismantling Adam's plan piece by piece. With Phyllis's inside information and Victor's resources, they traced every manipulated transaction and fabricated document. The press, initially poised to feast on their downfall, was left scrambling as the truth emerged. Adam's betrayal had been the root of the chaos, not Nick or Sharon. As the sun set over Genoa City, Sharon and Nick stood side by side on the balcony of the Newman estate, watching the city lights flicker below. The nightmare had tested them, pushed them to their limits, but they had survived. Sharon let out a deep breath, a rare smile breaking across her face. We did it, she said softly. Nick nodded, taking her hand in his. Yeah, we did. And no matter what comes next, we face it together. For Sharon and Nick, the worst nightmare had arrived, but it had also reminded them of their strength, their resilience, and the unbreakable bond that could withstand even the darkest storms. In Genoa City, where secrets always lurked and danger could strike at any moment, one thing was certain. Sharon and Nick had survived the unthinkable. And now, they were ready for whatever the city would throw at them. Had always been a place where secrets festered, truths were twisted, and betrayal lurked behind every polished smile. But even for a couple like Sharon and Nick Newman, whose lives had weathered more storms than most, nothing could have prepared them for the nightmare that was about to unfold. It all started on a seemingly ordinary morning. Sharon, ever the picture of poise despite her past turmoil, was sipping her coffee in the living room of the Newman estate when her phone buzzed. A text flashed across the screen. You need to know the truth. Meet me at Crimson and Clover. Come alone. Sharon's heart skipped a beat. There were few people in Genoa City who could inspire such dread in her, but the handwriting of manipulation was unmistakable. Her instincts screamed that this was not a casual meet-up. It was a setup. Still, she was Sharon Newman. Fear was a luxury she couldn't afford. Meanwhile, across town, Nick Newman was wrestling with his own anxieties. Ever since the events of the last corporate scandal involving Newman Enterprises, he had been walking a tightrope of public scrutiny, family pressure, and private guilt. When Sharon called to inform him about the mysterious text, the worry etched on his face deepened. I don't like this, Sharon, Nick said, his voice tight. Whatever this is, it's dangerous. You shouldn't go alone. Sharon offered him a reassuring smile, but it was fragile. Nick, I've handled worse. You know that. If this is about the company, or about our family, I need to know. I can't ignore it. And so, with her signature determination, Sharon drove to Crimson and Clover. The small, trendy cafe was unusually quiet, the kind of silence that always precedes chaos. She scanned the room and saw a figure sitting in the corner booth, partially obscured by shadows. As she approached, the figure rose. It was someone she never thought she'd see again, Diane Jenkins. Sharon froze, the air practically sucking out of her lungs. Diane's smile was polite but sharp, the kind of smile that could slice through steel. Sharon, Diane said, her tone smooth, almost teasing. We need to talk. Before Sharon could react, Diane handed her a thick manila envelope. Everything you need to know about Nick, your life. The things you thought were buried forever. It's all in here. Sharon's hands trembled as she opened the envelope. Photos, documents, and a series of confidential emails tumbled out. Her eyes widened in horror as she realized the depth of the secrets Diane had compiled. There were bank statements, legal documents, and correspondence that implicated not only Nick, but some of Sharon's closest allies in actions that could destroy them all. The message was clear. Diane intended to weaponize this information. And she had chosen the perfect moment. Meanwhile, at Newman Enterprises, Nick was pacing his office when Sharon called. Her voice was shaky. Nick, it's worse than we thought. Diane has everything. Nick froze. He could feel the blood drain from his face. Everything? Sharon, what do you mean everything? Before she could answer, the line went dead. Her phone displayed a chilling message. We're watching. Panic surged through both of them. This was no longer about corporate espionage or family squabbles. This was a threat, direct, personal, and terrifying. Back at the cafe, Sharon tried to reason with Diane. Why, Diane? After everything, why are you doing this? Diane's expression hardened. Because I always knew, Sharon. I always knew that Newman Enterprises was built on secrets and lies. And now it's your turn to pay. Just then, a shadow fell over Diane's shoulder. Sharon looked up and froze again. It was Victor Newman himself. His presence turned the room from tense to electrifyingly dangerous. Diane, Victor said, his voice low and controlled. Drop the act. You don't want to do this. Not to my family. Diane's smile faltered, but only slightly. Victor, always the hero, she sneered. But heroes can't protect everything. This is bigger than you, bigger than Nick. Sharon, you're going to wish you stayed home. Meanwhile, Sharon's mind raced. She couldn't let this spiral out of control. She had to get ahead of Diane, protect her family, and figure out how deep this nightmare went. She texted Nick. Meet me at the estate. Now. Nick, who had already begun suspecting that this was more than just Diane, didn't hesitate. He rushed over, his mind spinning with worst-case scenarios. When he arrived, Sharon was waiting, envelope in hand, her face pale but resolute. They both knew the stakes. Diane wasn't just threatening their reputations. She was threatening everything they had built together. And in Genoa City, reputations were everything. The couple sat in tense silence, the weight of the envelope between them. Sharon finally spoke. Nick, there's enough here to ruin us. Everything we've worked for. And Diane, she's not bluffing. Nick's jaw tightened. Then we fight. Together. We figure out what she's planning, and we shut it down before it gets any further. But as they strategized, a new threat emerged. Across town, Kane Ashby had intercepted one of Diane's emails, and the information it contained shocked him. He knew that if Sharon and Nick didn't act fast, Diane's plan could have consequences far beyond what anyone imagined, including legal ramifications that could land one of them in jail. Kane rushed to warn them, but the message arrived too late. Diane had already leaked a portion of the documents to the press. Genoa City's elite woke up to shocking headlines. Newman scandal, secrets exposed. The public reaction was instantaneous. Investors panicked. Friends turned cautious. And enemies saw an opening. Sharon's worst nightmare wasn't just the exposure. It was the chaos that Diane had unleashed with surgical precision. At the Newman estate, Sharon and Nick watched the news coverage in disbelief. The camera flashed images of Nick in private meetings, Sharon in sensitive conversations, and insinuations about hidden financial misconduct. Every detail Diane had meticulously gathered was now in the public eye. Nick, Sharon whispered, her voice breaking. How do we fight something like this? Nick took her hand, squeezing it tightly. Sharon, we survive. We've survived worse. But we do it smart. We don't let Diane control us. They moved quickly, contacting their legal team, confronting allies, and reaching out to anyone who could help. Victor, ever the patriarch, coordinated damage control, using his influence to prevent further fallout. But even Victor knew that Diane was a formidable opponent. Her timing, her precision, and her ruthlessness made her unlike anyone they had faced before. In the meantime, Diane watched from a safe distance, smug and confident. But unbeknownst to her, Sharon had planted a plan of her own. Using a combination of strategy, social media sleuthing, and insider help, Sharon discovered a critical flaw in Diane's setup. A single email that contradicted her entire narrative. Armed with this, Sharon and Nick made a bold move. A live press conference to counter Diane's allegations. Sharon, composed yet fierce, addressed the city, exposing Diane's manipulation while presenting irrefutable evidence that protected the Newmans. Nick supported her, calm and authoritative, turning public perception in their favor. Within hours, the story shifted. The headlines began to change. Newman family vindicated. Streets of Genoa City were buzzing with tension this week as the latest domino in the Newman-Abbott saga finally fell. Victor Newman, the indomitable force of the Newman Empire, set his sights on Kyle Abbott, leaving the young Abbott heir blindsided and scrambling to defend his place in the corporate world. The week's episodes promise shock, betrayal, and a tension-filled chess match between two of Genoa City's most powerful families. Monday, a tense reunion. The week began with a subdued but palpable tension in the Newman offices. Victor, ever the calculating patriarch, summoned Kyle to his office under the guise of a routine check-in on Jabot's latest ventures. Kyle, confident but cautious, entered expecting a routine conversation. However, Victor's eyes were sharp, cold, and unyielding, a clear indication that something was amiss. "Kyle," Victor began, his voice steady yet tinged with menace, "I've been watching Jabot closely. Your recent decisions have been interesting, but there's something I need to clarify before we proceed." Victor leaned forward, steepling his fingers. "You're aware that family legacy and loyalty matter more than profit, yes?" Kyle shifted in his seat, forcing a smile. "Of course, Mr. Newman. You know I've always respected that." Victor's piercing gaze softened momentarily, but his next words cut like ice. "Respect isn't enough. I need action, Kyle. I need assurance that you aren't undermining what I've built, or what your father has built. Genoa City doesn't forgive mistakes lightly." Kyle felt the weight of those words pressing down on him. Victor was testing him, probing for weaknesses. But what Kyle didn't realize was that Victor had already made moves behind the scenes. Moves that could leave Kyle scrambling to save face and position. Tuesday, shocking moves behind closed doors. As Kyle pondered Victor's cryptic warning, the Newman board convened for a special meeting. Victor's presence alone demanded attention. Every executive sensed a storm was coming. Before Kyle could even speak, Victor dropped the bombshell. "I've decided to take a more active role in overseeing Jabot's operations," Victor announced, his voice calm but authoritative. "Effective immediately, I will be implementing changes to ensure that Jabot's legacy and its future remain secure." Gasps rippled through the room. Kyle's heart sank. This wasn't just a friendly warning. Victor was essentially signaling a takeover. Kyle tried to maintain composure, but internally, panic was setting in. He had always known that working under Victor Newman was a high-stakes game, but he had never expected the master of manipulation to directly intervene in his career. "Victor, I appreciate your concern, but I assure you Jabot is in capable hands," Kyle attempted, his voice wavering slightly. "We've been making great strides." Victor raised a hand, silencing him. "Spare me the reassurances, Kyle. Actions speak louder than words. And I will be watching. Very closely." As the board meeting ended, whispers of speculation spread like wildfire. Could Victor be planning to edge Kyle out of Jabot completely? Or was this a test to see if Kyle could rise to the challenge of the Newman scrutiny? Wednesday, alliances shift. Meanwhile, outside of corporate walls, Kyle sought counsel from his closest allies. Summer Newman, ever perceptive, noticed the tension etched into Kyle's demeanor. "What did Victor want?" she asked, concern in her eyes. Kyle recounted the meeting, trying to mask his worry. "It's not just a warning. He's stepping in directly. I think he's trying to see if I'm capable of handling the pressure, but I don't know if I can keep up with him." Summer placed a reassuring hand on Kyle's arm. "You've got this, Kyle. You know Victor better than anyone. Just stay smart, anticipate his moves, and don't let him corner you." But not everyone in Kyle's corner was helpful. Jack Abbott, ever the schemer, saw Victor's interference as an opportunity to push his own agenda. Jack approached Kyle with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You know, Kyle, sometimes family interference can be educational. But be careful. Victor doesn't play fair. He's not just testing you, he's plotting." Kyle knew Jack was right. Every move in Genoa City came with a price. And when Victor Newman was involved, that price could be devastating. Thursday, the game of secrets. Victor, as always, was 10 steps ahead. Unbeknownst to Kyle, Victor had arranged a private dinner with key executives and board members to discuss Jabot's future without revealing the full scope to Kyle. His goal was simple: create an atmosphere of uncertainty and pressure Kyle into showing his true colors. During the dinner, Victor's allies subtly hinted at weaknesses in Jabot's recent strategies. The whispers weren't overt, but they were enough to make Kyle anxious. Every decision Kyle had made over the past few months was now under scrutiny, and even his closest supporters were beginning to question his judgment. Victor, ever the master manipulator, left the dinner with a quiet satisfaction. He knew Kyle would feel the weight of the scrutiny and that the young Abbott would have no choice but to prove himself or falter. Friday, Kyle's counter-move. By Friday, Kyle realized that waiting for Victor to make the next move was a mistake. He needed a strategy of his own. He convened a meeting with his top advisors in summer, laying out a bold plan to regain control of the narrative. "Victor thinks he can intimidate me," Kyle said, determination in his voice. "But I'm not going to crumble. I know this company, I know the market, and I know the people who work with me. We're going to show Victor that Jabot isn't a place for interference, it's a place for vision and growth." Summer nodded, impressed by Kyle's resolve. "Exactly. You have to think ahead, anticipate his moves, and stay one step ahead. Show him you're not just capable, you're unstoppable. Kyle's plan involved leveraging relationships within the company, highlighting successful campaigns he had spearheaded, and presenting a bold new proposal to the board that emphasized innovation and growth. It was a gamble, but one that could cement his authority and demonstrate that he was more than capable of handling the Newman scrutiny. Weekend, the showdown. The week culminated in a dramatic showdown at the boardroom. Victor, as always, was calm, composed, and seemingly untouchable. Kyle presented his plan with confidence, outlining a series of initiatives designed to strengthen Jabo's market position and ensure long-term stability. Victor listened silently, his expression unreadable. When Kyle finished, the room held its collective breath. Victor leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers, and then, in a move that stunned everyone, he smiled. "Well done, Kyle," Victor said, his voice smooth but heavy with meaning. "You've shown initiative, vision, and resilience. But remember, this is only the beginning. In Genoa City, you either adapt or you're left behind." Kyle exhaled in relief, but he knew Victor's words were a warning, not a congratulations. The battle for dominance, influence, and legacy in Genoa City was far from over. What this means for Genoa City? Victor's intervention in Jabo's operations is more than a personal power play. It's a statement. He is reminding everyone in Genoa City that the Newman Empire remains a force to be reckoned with, and that legacy, loyalty, and strategic cunning are non-negotiable.